Test. Okay, so this is a DM from someone within the community, and they say, Sergio, the only reason I'm interested. This was a little bit of context. A DM asking, "Hey, is your end goal to get back with Annika?" And I sent him like some picture, a gif of like ascension. Like that was my response. The only reason and I asked him why. I said the only reason I'm interested is that my previous ex was a vampire. We lasted 3 years. She drained everything out of me, emotionally, financially. Uh, these glasses look stupid. She also had mental issues like Annika, and not to say she's the same as Annika, but I see some similarities. You'd think I want nothing to do with someone who took everything from me, and yet somehow I'm just not able to stop loving her. Anyways, I'm just trying to figure out if there's a path that leads me back to my crazy ex, or if I just need to move on and find a new path. So we're going to put this over here. And close this. We're going to do a little bit of a whiteboard, okay? So, is there the question at hand is there a way back to this sort of ideal? Because when it comes to dealing with vampires, and I'm going to say exactly how it is, or women who have a high potential to sort of energetically cast a vampiric egregore of the human psyche that exists in some quantum thought realm. Okay, I'm not talking about they literally turn into a vampire. Although theoretically, sure, that is possible if they immerse themselves so willingly into the vampiric realm intentionally. However, since these women are are channeling vampires, how can you come to terms with finding a new path, or and I mean this, and I want to highlight this because you said, is there a path for me to move on from my ex? Oh no, that leads me back to my ex, or if there's a new path. And with that, I want to say this: because we exist in infinity, because that is the nature of our reality, anything is possible. However, to a certain extent, and this is where earnest but we exist within infinity. However, simultaneously, we exist in infinity in a way that is finite. Okay? So, that sort of answers, is there a path to leads to my ex? Yes, there is a path. Should you move on? Or find something else? So, and to answer that question, I would have to say this. When a vampire is sucking you dry, okay, she's literally sucking you. She's sucking your essence. What is this literal vampiric quality that is happening, okay? She is exciting you. She is literally in a literal way exciting you and literally capturing you. Okay, like, so the ability to capture someone's attention is a very subtle form of vampiric tendency. Okay, because if you're able to capture someone's intention so much and maximize that captivity, it then turns into a draining quality. Okay, So on a initial level, on a beginning stage, vampires are here to do what? Capture your attention. Wow, you are star-struck, okay? Look at you, just so happy for a moment. Because if you do not, because at the end of the day, vampires are here to do what? One thing, and that is to suck you dry and essentially turn you into a husk. And even to some extent, make you absorb some of their qualities of vampiricness. So because she's excited you, she has now turned you alert, captured you, and captivated you. But she's doing it to such an extent that if you do not give control, if you do not have skillful control, she will drain you out until you turn into a very sad boy. Why? And look, here's your little fangs. Why? Because she's here to get what she wants from you until you can no longer essentially sustain her desire. People who are vampiric in nature don't have what? I mean, are unlikely to be content. Hence the whole like life suckingness of it all. Now, if you don't administer this one thing right here, while you're essentially captured in an accelerated state, this is good. This is good. You want this, okay? But if you don't administer this thing right here, which is control, you will fucking turn into a sort of a drained husk. Now, even in this drained husk state, there's a sort of what is one thing vampires are known for, okay? They're known for what? Hypnotizing you, okay? I'm not making this up. This comes from a literal, like the literal lore. They go, and you will because part of this the vampire in a supernatural sense, it's because they're so good at being able to capture your attention. They're able to sort of shift and transition that capturing into a sort of command manipulation. Now, this is like extreme level vampire techniques. Like, and it's 0% chance that your girlfriend is this intentional of a vampire. And if it was, you'd know way beforehand. This is more along the lines of like, she just wants you to sort of do stuff, right? Or that essentially leave you at a husk. But in her unintentional way, in her ability just to become a vampire to such an extent, she does this unintentionally. And it leaves you wanting more, right? So what I hear from this is she drained me from everything, right? She drained me from everything, yet I still love her. Okay? Now this is not a bad thing, okay? This is not a bad thing at all. I don't care what relationship guru tells you that this is a bad thing. It is absolutely not. Okay? I have love is not love which alters when it alteration finds or bends with the remover to remove. It bears it out till the end of doom. Okay? This is I found this to be truth. And if anyone else finds this to be not true, please let me know before I never writ nor man has ever loved. Okay? That is literally Shakespeare, Sonnet 116, okay? You still love your vampiric ex. But I might add, within this certainty of love, combined with the drained state, leads to and which emerged from a lack of control, leads to delusion and confusion, because there is still this absolute certain truth that you're sort of in some sense almost trying to unhallucinate yourself from, like, because at the end of the goal, like, this is the unwinding of karmas. This is the unwinding of tension, of aggression, and essentially unto release back into a sort of baseline awareness, that's not of hatred, okay, or confusion, or it's of acceptance. Okay, so yes, it is infinitely possible for you to get your girlfriend back, and who fucking knows, right? However, with vampires, you have to maintain desirability, okay? And something tells me that vampires really only like you whenever you're in this excited state, because this shows vitality, this shows cunning, this shows the possibilities, okay? And in order to maintain this, it would require control. Now, I guess what I'm going to ask you is, do you like, and the thing is that it actually, it might even take an outside force to genuinely, I think it does. I think it sometimes it does take an outside force to come to grips with this. Like, is to have you come to the grips with the reality that it might not be, although it's infinitely possible, yes, for you to get your girl back, it might not be relatively possible, okay? Because we exist in a finite world, yet however infinite at the same time, and that is the paradox that we're in, okay? So this takes real self-assessment, and you can't bullshit yourself. And I've personally found out that it's very hard to do that. And so if you would need to move on and find a new path, I would ask you this, because have you established enough control to sustain this is a very important part, to sustain interest, for you to be, and sustain interest, for you to be like, quote unquote, happy with a in this excited state, B, or C, not drained. Because you can only not be drained whenever you maintain control of what it sounds like to me, the foundational qualities of your life, which is emotions, which is finances, and not just that, but honestly, even community. I'm sure that you dealing with this vampire had to even cut people off of your community that you might not have even acknowledged. So there's these certain foundational pillars that have to sort of be maintained. Although these are subject to change depending on the situation. But you have but these are, and I kind of say that reluctantly, because it's almost impossible that totally sacrificing your finances, B, totally sacrificing your community, C, totally sacrificing your emotions, especially all at the same time, are ever the right play. At the end of the day, we're and so how likely is it after 3 years and it hurts me. I'm in a very similar. I'm in the same boat. You know, I'm in a very similar boat. Like, well, I've been taking care of this fucking Tamagotchi for 130 days now, or 140 days, because Annika said at 368 or 5, at 365 days of keeping the Tamagotchi alive, I could have sex with her and she would break her 8-year celibacy, okay? And I would think I'd feel like a little bit of a yogic, vampiric training master if I was able to do that. So, while I'm in the same boat as you, as it's hard for me to let go of that, I also have to be earnest in my own heart of hearts and not fuck with the cutty. I can't. And this is why in that I don't know if you saw that video, but this is why in that video I said till the end of May. And I don't even say that, and even in my heart of hearts I still slightly don't believe that. Like, cuz I would still long for her, you know what I mean? But what I do mean is that by the end of May, I would likely intentionally go fuck someone else to start truly moving on from the pot the quote unquote infinite possibility of Annika coming back into my life, us having the kid, her being my mother, and us essentially raising, living, being each other's life partner. Okay. So on that note, I ask you, fellow viewer, I ask you, fellow viewer, in your heart of hearts, and by the way, I'm kind of hypocritical to this because I might even still keep the Tamagotchi alive at the end of at the end of May, which is a daily habitual routine, basically for at least I don't know, a year. I don't know. And yeah, it sounds pathetic to even say that, but that is the truth of that is the truth of the commitment that I established this practice. And to give up, and you know, I want to come back onto this. What does utter failure look like in this situation? Like, when can you earnestly be at total absolute failure? And not just absolute failure, because experiencing that takes a certain level of recognition. And you know, there is no amount of faith, there is no amount of prayer, there is no amount of, and I don't want to say that there is no amount of will, because theoretically there is. But however, on a relative level, when it comes to accepting failure, it is a necessary part of ascension, which gets you more likely to become this guy, okay? The guy who's in control. The guy who also accepts the things that are what? Out of his control. And only repeated failure, and I'm going to say this again, maybe vampires are your training ground. But I also, maybe, because there is wisdom to be gained with this. But I also want to say that there is so many different types of women out there that are not vampiric in nature. And maybe it's time that you seek out a healer. But the thing is you might have to make compromises with that. And I'm not gonna bullshit with you. Sometimes they may not be able to captivate you in the same way. And but it is in the recognition of the failure that you then see and understand the beauty of the other person, because this is a certain caveat. They might not capture you in the same way. Okay? So it sort of takes like this a lens of readjustment, a sort of, because at the end of the day, you built a life with this person, right, for 3 years, you know, and you've given your heart, love, and soul, and I have to ask you, like, how realistic is it for her to come back into your life? And I know for me, I know for me, and I'm not gonna say, because if you were there, you fucking know. But maybe, but I know for me, I dropped a nuke. Okay, I dropped a nuke on the fucking space because of my fucking injury. Okay, because of something that was out of my control. Okay, so in this realm of control, you also have to start being able to accept the things that are in your control and or out of your control, and coming face to face with failure is a deep integral part of that, and I think it gets you closer to being this guy. And in order to come face to face with failure, it brings you closer to self-love, um, and you gain wisdom, you gain more control, and yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, as much as you want to love the person, none of it matters if A, they're not loving you the way that you want to be loved, because this love that you have is conditional. Okay? It's not unconditional. Unfortunately, we haven't built a society that can sustain unconditional love in its totality. And that is why we need to build the foundations for the conditional love skillfully to then allow for unconditional love to set in. And so for me, what that would look like is having sex with Annika, building a family, building this diamond like bond. And then, she could I'm just going to say this. She could have sex or do whatever she wants with other people, because that's what I'm comfortable with, as long as I have the same freedoms. Um because there's already this root of like unbreakableness. And there's also this core foundational of truth, of trust and understanding that is unshakable. Um but yeah, I try not to live in la la land for too much, because yes, although it is a great place to get in tune with what is possible, it can distract you from the the way things are. I think that there is something to just coming in contact with truth, and sometimes hope can be a point of suffering, and it can also be a point of ease. Um, yeah, this is my little Venn diagram on love and vampires, and control and out of control, infinity, baseness, relativity, truth, awesomeness. Fucking let's get this show on the road, bro. My name's Sergio. The triumph of a heart forgives all. Peace. See ya. Oh wait, hold on. Hold on. I didn't. All right, now goodbye. Bye.